something. Oh, the last one was 2 hours. Okay. So did you bring your cards tonight? Last time I saw you, I wanted. You didn't have it. I wanted it.
Yes, I haven't had a chance to check it with our conversation.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you.
Good evening. I'd like to call the East Bay Community Energy meeting to order. Reconvene the meeting of January 21st back to order. First item of business, we do the roll call.
Albany?
Here.
Berkeley?
Here.
Dublin is excused. Emeryville? Here. Fremont? Hayward?
Here.
Livermore is excused. Oakland? Piedmont? Here. San Leandro?
Present.
Union City?
Here.
Community Advisory Committee?
Here.
Alameda County.
Here.
Thank you. You have a quorum.
I apologize. Al, if you could do me a favor and lead me in the pledge, I would appreciate it.
Sure. Everyone will please rise and join us. And begin. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, before we get started, I'd like to ask for a moment of silence in one of our members of this board, Vice Mayor of Dublin, Don Biddle. As all of you know, Don was the Vice Mayor of Dublin. He was appointed to the Dublin City Council in 2008, and he was a longtime resident of Dublin. In addition to serving on this board, he also served on the Housing Commission of Alameda County. He was on the Alameda County Waste Management Authority, Alameda County Library Commission, the Dublin Housing Authority, the Amador Valley Transit Authority, Alameda County Transportation Commission, the Tri-Valley Transportation Commission, East Bay Community Energy Board, which is us, and the Tri-Valley San Joaquin Regional Rail Authority. I know that each of us really enjoyed working with Don. For those of you who didn't have the opportunity, I'm quoted as saying Don was not a politician. He was just a great man doing a great job for his community. And I would like to observe a moment of silence in Don Biddle's honor. Thank you. He was a good friend. So with that, I will go to public comment. And we have, looks like, I don't know, Al, is your penmanship just getting worse?
Yeah.
Okay. Al Weinrab.
Thank you. Good evening, folks. I'm Jessica Tovar, who's the coordinator of the East Bay Clean Power Alliance. Couldn't be here this evening, so she asked me to talk for a moment about a paper that we put on, distributed to you, but didn't have a chance to set out. But this is an official position of the East Bay Clean Power Alliance, and it actually calls on the board to reconsider the decision that it made on February 7th in terms of the power mix products, the default product of a 38% renewable product, and the opt-up product called Brilliant 100, which is a 40% renewable product. And we are asking for reconsideration consideration of this withdrawal of the Brilliant 100 product and the substitution of a 100% renewable product. The product that's the opt-out product, it's called a carbon-free product. That means it's 60% large hydro, 40% renewable, 60% large hydro. This is not a good product. This is a product that does nothing to address the climate issue, which is what East Bay Clean Community Energy is all about. It does not do anything to encourage or promote renewable energy development. And on top of that, it does nothing toward the energy goals of East Bay Community Energy. It's basically a sham product, and because of that, it has already been received a lot of, what I would say. It's got a very bad reception in the community, especially the environmental community and whatnot. Worse, it's not even viewed as a sham product, but as a scam product, because it has the image, because it's called Brilliant 100, that it's actually doing something for the climate and promoting the needs of the community, where in fact it has not that effect at all. So now in the community, this is not called the Brilliant 100 product, it's called the Bogus 100 product. And it is seen as a way of sort of deceiving and fooling the community to thinking that we're doing something. Worse than being a bogus 100 product is that because it's based on large hydro, it's very, very problematic. Large hydro is out of state. It provides no local clean energy jobs. It's extremely damaging to the environment, and for that reason, California doesn't even recognize it as a renewable product. And on top of that, it is. I'm sorry, I just lost my thought for a moment. But it's a very faulty product, and because of that, it is a dangerous product. It doesn't get us where we want to go. So it is really an at-fault product. So what we have here for East Bay Community Energy is the default product and an at-fault product. And this is the way it's being looked at as a community. And to call an at-fault product and opt-up, I'm just wrapping up this sentence.
I wish you would, because you're way over time.
Thank you. Basically means that we can't distinguish between up and down, and that's not going to look good for East Bay Community Energy.
Okay, so I'm looking for a motion on the consent calendar. I would remind you, as you're moving on the consent calendar, please do not move the minutes of, actually I'm going to remove from the consent calendar the minutes from February 21st, because this is a continuation meeting from the 21st, so there are no minutes from the 21st. So the consent calendar will not include February 21st minutes.
So I'll move items 5 through 9.
Well, you can move the February 7th minutes.
Oh, I apologize. 4, 6, 7, 8, and 9.
So we're excluding the February 21st out of 4. Okay, that's pretty clear. All right, is there a second? Second. Motion by Bendel, second by Thomas. Is there any objection to the minutes? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. All right, with that, we will move to item 8. No. 10. I'm sorry.
Good evening, board members. My name is Howard Chang. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for East Bay Community Energy. And this evening, we're seeking approval to adopt a resolution authorizing the Chief Executive Officer to execute a revolving credit facility with Barclays Bank. The facility will provide startup capital for pre-launch activities and credit for power procurement as well. We're requesting approval for a $50 million facility size with a 3-year term. It does have the flexibility to terminate the agreement after 1 year without any penalty. As a reminder, we did a formal RFP at the end of last year. We did that with members of EBCE staff, the board as well as CAC and unanimously recommended moving forward with Barclays, and we received approval from the board to do so. There were a few characteristics that stood out for this facility, and that was to provide unsecured credit as well as a good deal of flexibility for the facility size. And Barclays has had experience providing credit to the CCA industry historically. At this stage, we've been in extensive negotiations with Barclays, and we've reached an agreement on all of the major provisions related to facility size, tenor, the permitted use of funds, cost, et cetera, and key debt covenants, I should say. Any remaining items that are still under discussion are viewed as non-material. One of the key provisions that we have agreed to is to allow for EBC to repay the Alameda County loan, assuming that certain operating reserve requirements and debt service coverage ratios are properly met. We understand that was an important provision. Let me summarize some of the financial costs associated with the facility. The interest costs can be broken down in a few ways. For a collateralized portion of the loan facility, the cost is at LIBOR plus 1.4%. The uncollateralized portion of the facility would be at LIBOR plus 5.25%. And then any unused, undrawn portions have a commitment fee at 1%. The finance charges to third parties, this is currently at an estimate of $100,000 to $150,000. That's to cover any outside counsel costs, recording fees, et cetera. Proceeds, maximum proceeds from the facility are at $50 million. It's the size of the facility itself. And then we laid out a couple examples of what the all-in cost would be. Obviously, that would depend on what the actual draws are, but the examples, if we were to draw a maximum amount of $50 million over the entire facility duration, we would have an estimated cost of $10 million, $406,000, and $250,000. And that assumes that we were at a completely uncollateralized loan facility. So that's sort of the maximum cost that we would possibly see from the facility. Another example is if we had an average loan balance of $10 million and an undrawn amount of $40 million over the 3 years, that cost would come out to $3,401,250. Again, that is assuming an uncollateralized loan cost. So that's sort of just a snapshot of a couple scenarios of how we might potentially draw on the facility. A couple final points here. The Alameda County did provide significant funds to EBCE for startup costs. We're seeking this facility because costs for staffing, marketing, compliance, et cetera, exceed that amount, and the bulk of the facilities are needed for power procurement. So to provide collateral reserve to our energy suppliers, which is, of course, a critical part of our operations prior to having revenues generated. In terms of the collateralized versus uncollateralized provision, if we are able to post collateral in the form of cash, letter of credit, guarantees from the city or county, we would be able to reduce the interest costs based off of those two different rates that I laid out. I'll leave it at that in terms of the summary, open up for any questions. At this stage, we feel pretty comfortable. We feel very comfortable moving forward with signing the agreement, though.
Okay, so pretty straightforward. Mayor?
Yeah, I just want to say that I served on the review panel for both the banking and credit contracts, and Barclays was clearly the best creditor that we could select, and particularly has an interest and experience in working with CCAs and supporting renewable energy investments. So I think moving ahead with this agreement will not only serve the agency's financial needs, but will also advance, I think, our broader goals. And I did want to just follow up on the point that was made around providing collateral financial guarantees by JPA members. Nick and I had a meeting with our staff, our Director of Finance, to discuss the possibility for the City of Berkeley to provide some sort of guarantee, and that would actually help lower the costs of the credit facility. What is the time frame, Nick, for cities to indicate their interest in providing some guarantee or credit commitment?
So there's not a specific time frame. So the way the facility is structured is to allow, once a guarantee is put in place, we receive the credit, we receive the interest rate relief thereafter. So we've been working to finalize things, and then we'll start making the rounds again to walk through what the structure would be. But it's not a time-bound initiative.
One of the things I will say is, Alameda County provided a significant amount of upfront capital to start this agency, and I just want to encourage the other cities to, really consider the possibility of, providing. I think it could be in the form of a cash guarantee or just a letter of credit, not actually providing an actual cash guarantee, but rather a letter of credit to provide some collateral to help reduce the cost of the credit facility. Thanks. And with that, I'd like to move the item.
Motion by Mayor Eglin.
Second.
Second by Director Mindell. Any other questions? I know for you alternates, some of this may be seeming a little foreign, but believe me, a lot of this has been vetted, and I know you've read your agendas. So, but I know it's difficult, but a lot of this stuff has been going on for quite a while. But I do want to say I really appreciate the alternates showing up tonight, because this is some pretty important time-sensitive stuff. So thank you very much for taking time out of your night to be here. And with that, is there any objection to the motion? Okay, motion passed without objection. Move to item 11.
Item 11 is the approval of initial net energy metering policy. The staff recommendation here is to approve this initial net metering policy, which I'll walk through quickly, and then allow for additional modifications and enhancements to the policy after the local development business planning process has been completed. So the background here is, net energy metering is the policy that, over 25,000 Alameda County residents use to, support their rooftops, the rooftop solar systems they have on their homes and businesses and municipal buildings. There are sort of a couple of key elements here to the way net metering works and the policy recommendations. Net metering, there's the power you use on site, there's the power you export and you receive credit for. That's the export value, so we have a recommendation here. There's the billing mechanics, so it's the frequency of when you pay your bill. If you have net metering, you've probably paid an annual true-up bill, and that annual true-up can be pretty painful. Hundreds of dollars, potentially more. So we have a policy to help mitigate some of the true-up payments. We have a recommendation around the enrollment time frame for when net metering customers are going to be enrolled in East Bay Community Energy Service. What we're going to pay for surplus, so that's the total energy. At the end of the year, you've produced more energy from your system than you used. There's a surplus, what the payments for that surplus is, and then finally what the payment process over the course of the year is. So the recommendation here, the recommendation is for all existing customers. So these are all customers who have already installed systems and are transitioning from PG&E service to East Bay Community Energy Service. Maintain the full value proposition. No extra enhancements or extra credits. You made an investment, we're going to honor that investment by offering you the same retail credit. For new customers, so new sort of standard retail customers, all also offer, present the same value proposition as PG&E offers. So you get a full retail credit for every kilowatt hour that you export. This is really a recognition of the fact that we're installing a lot of solar in Alameda County right now, and the market is working for sort of I would call the mainstream market segments: single-family residential, business, and then one of the main sort of I think policy recommendations that came out of the local development business plan draft section on net energy metering was this idea, and this is something you see across the board in other aspects of the local development business plan, are this idea of community benefit adders. So identifying specific market segments where incremental investment by East Bay Community Energy will bear incremental community benefits. And so the idea for this initial net metering policy is to say, let's focus on somewhat larger than initially contemplated in the local development business plan, somewhat larger bill adders, and focus those on two segments: the low-income residential segment and the municipal accounts. So really the example there are schools. And so in the recommended policy, it's to a 1 cent adder for all exports from qualified new municipal net metered systems and qualified net metered systems that are deployed on eligible sort of low income households. So that's the sort of the crux of the export credit recommendation. It does slightly deviate from the recommendation in the local development business plan draft document. The real difference is in our staff recommendation, it's to focus on these two market segments, low income and municipal accounts, and offer higher adders, whereas in the local development business plan, the recommendation was to offer lower adders, but for residential, for all new customers, as well as low-income customers and municipal accounts. There are two other factors that I'll touch upon in a moment that we don't actually address here for adders, and the reasons for that I'll touch upon as well. So for billing, we're recommending a transition from an annual billing to a monthly billing process. This is the idea that we want to avoid these big true-ups at the end, these big bills, because you're not paying your PG&E bill at all throughout the year, and at the end of the year you're getting a year's worth of billing. This is a recommendation from the local development business plan as well. For surplus credits, so these are the credits that it's fairly small number of systems generate more kilowatt hours at the end of the year than are used by the home or business. But in those cases, currently PG&E pays what is called net surplus compensation, which is roughly 3.5 cents a kilowatt hour. The recommendation here is for new customers who don't meet one of those sort of community benefit criteria to offer either the greater of $2,500, the greater of $2,500, or a rate that's calculated based on the net surplus compensation cap. So if you really think about this as for a residential system, the $2,500 cap would apply, and then for a very large commercial system, very likely if they're oversizing it, the net surplus compensation would kick in. And then for those new low-income customers and those new municipal customers, there would also be a 1 cent adder. Now, for enrollment, one of the challenges with net metering customers is that enrolling them, you want to enroll them onto East Bay Community Energy Service as close to their annual true update, because over the course of the year you generate credit, and then at the end of the year, you have this annual true-up. If you transition from PG&E to East Bay Community Energy, say in the middle of the year, that customer potentially loses half of the credits that they've banked. So what you want to do is you want to time your enrollment of your net metering customers to be as close to when they really install their system as possible. So with that in mind, we're recommending sort of every 2 months we will enroll customers, and that's something that also comports with the recommendation in the local development business plan. And that's the crux of it. I will also say there are 2 other community benefit adders that are included in the local development business plan. One is a focus on workforce development. So it's an adder for solar installers who are using local workforce, union workforce, paying prevailing wage. There's a number of criteria that are included in the local development business plan. There's another for supply shifting, so systems that have energy storage or that are oriented west, which means that they're going to produce more energy later in the day, which is good as we have lots of solar on the grid. And in both of those cases, we're not including them at this point because there are administrative challenges, or there's administrative details, I would say, that need to be worked out before we roll it out. So if we think about policies that we want to start offering customers June 1st, we want to make sure that we have the details for, say, a workforce development program. So in the local development business plan net metering recommendation, one of the tools that they suggest is a process to basically check the payroll of the installer to make sure, hey, if we're going to give this installer the credit of a half a cent or a 1 cent adder, we want to make sure they're actually paying their workforce prevailing wage. So we need to make sure we have a process to audit that. So we make sure that installers are actually doing what they're saying they're going to do. And so there's some details that need to be worked out to get there about what are the resources we have to have internally to be able to ensure compliance with these workforce standards. Similarly for, say, the supply shift. If you think about people installing solar systems on their homes or buildings, and you want to give them extra credit because they're west facing and not south facing, well, we have to make sure that we have a process in place to audit whether in fact they are installing them in the proper way. And it may be as simple as taking a picture and tagging it with a GPS location, so we know the system is there, they took a picture, it's west facing, but you probably still want to have some subset of those systems that you're physically going and visiting to ensure, okay, that is the system that they say it is. It really was on that roof, not some other roof. And so I think in both cases, these are things that we absolutely believe make a lot of sense, but we want to make sure that we have the implementation details all worked out before we go to customers and say, okay, we're going to give you this adder if you do these things. So with that, that's all I have.
Okay. Yes. Director Donahue?
Does this mean that the agreement you have with these net customers is going to be of limited time scope? So in other words, as things change, as technology changes in the future, are you going to lock in all of these people to a long-term set of agreements?
So we don't actually have, that was not something we've contemplated here. It's the term grandfathering. It's a pretty standard part of net metering if you're a PG&E customer. It's, I install a rooftop solar system, and if the rules change significantly, I get to continue to sort of operate under the rules as they were when I made my investment decision. We're not contemplating a policy one way or the other, but we probably should have that discussion. I think in general, most CCAs and certainly the investor and utilities have, if not explicit, there's an understanding that customers will be grandfathered.
Anybody else this way? Anybody this way? Okay, Barbara, you want to go? Barbara Stebbins?
So So last week, on the first half of this meeting, last Wednesday, East Bay Clean Power Alliance made it pretty clear that we are mostly in support of what the staff is recommending, in particular the adders, the billing process, the enrollment, all of that looks good. We're in the support of the Community Advisory Committee as well. But what we're requesting right now, really, it's being determined by marketing, because none of the NEM customers are going to get enrolled until next year anyway, which should give the program plenty of time to figure out all of the adders that we want to offer. And so I included a little handout with my presentation, because there are a lot of adders that are being proposed by the local development business plan. Under community benefits, besides municipal accounts and low income, they're also proposing that nonprofit organizations could in fact be included in that. The workforce development adder seems like a really good one for us to endorse, especially if you look at the figures that the local development business plan has produced. If you were to pay a premium of $7 an hour to your workers doing the solar installations, it would wind up costing for a 10 kilowatt system, which is that's a large rooftop system. Kind of a large house would be more like 5 kilowatts. Anyway, for a 10 kilowatt system, that would add about $560 to $700 for the entire system. When you're paying already probably $20,000 for a 10 kilowatt system, that's not a huge amount of money more to add. So that we think that that's a really important adder to help improve the quality of solar installation jobs. So that has a lot of community benefit power there. The power shift adders are going to become increasingly important as this agency faces a mandate to have a certain amount of storage capacity and the ability to address peak load issues. So that's another one that's got really a lot of community benefit, because if you reduce that most expensive electricity, that benefits all of your customers as well as the agency. So if you look on the charts, the first chart there shows you the projected cost to the agency for each of those adders. And what you can see that convinced us that it was a good idea not to offer half-cent to, everybody, all the NEM customers, is the fact that that's the most expensive thing to the program. You could save that revenue and target other community benefit adders more.
Thank you, Barbara. Okay, Dan.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation and for the comments. So I got a couple of questions. Do we know now what percentage, for those who are net metering customers, or that were going to become our customers, what percentage are your typical residential rooftop solar in terms of the load, and what percentage is larger scale net metering, commercial?
So we have 170 some megawatts of net metering systems. We have 25,000 or so customers. I don't actually have the, because part of it is we don't actually know the size of the system, so that's not, when we get the data from PG&E, it doesn't say customer X has a 5 kilowatt or a 50 kilowatt. It's their net metering customer, and you can sort of determine, well, they're a commercial customer, so they'll have a bigger system, or they're non-commercial, so they have a smaller system.
Yeah.
I would say the skew is probably more megawatts on some large systems, but the absolute number of customers, obviously lots of residential.
Right. Okay, so this is good. I'm glad we're going full retail and not doing some of the stuff that some utility tried to do a number of years ago, and luckily that didn't happen. So, I mean, this is fine. I'm not sensing that what we're doing, nor maybe is there anything that we can do realistically, is going to really create this tremendous additional incentive for people who are not yet net metering customers to say, oh, now I'm going to get rooftop solar because otherwise, before I wasn't, but now I'm going to because of this. This is not, I don't think this is enough of an additional something to create that extra push.
So I think that, there's a bit of a conscious decision, I think, in the recommendation that for, the average sort of, average homeowner in Alameda County who's medium and or higher income, there's adequate incentive today, and we're seeing quite high adoption. Just one of the bigger limits of adoption are more like my roof is too old, or there's a tree next door, as opposed to it doesn't make economic sense. And so instead is to focus on, there are communities and segments where we want to enhance adoption. So that's the focus on, say, focusing on low-income customers where there is not as much adoption. And then the hope with a larger, a 1 cent adder for municipal accounts is to say, we want, the added benefits of a school or a city building or a county building of putting solar, those savings then directly hit the bottom line of the municipal entity, the solar that's being installed, on a school. Those almost always are going to be have higher labor standards because those customers demand higher labor standards. So there's these sort of knock-on benefits. So I think the view is for these segments, this will be an incentive to drive greater adoption. And in sort of the mass market segment, we are seeing adoption. It's not, obviously we can supercharge it more, but with the scarce resources we have, let's focus on those underserved segments and really get more rooftop solar deployed there.
Okay, thank you. So, a couple more questions on the workforce. So, we're giving an incentive, essentially, to do something good, a community benefit in terms of what the workforce that they're hiring. So, I mean, some residential homeowner, they have some, small contractor who is just hiring a few guys. The homeowner, him or herself, is not going to really have much say in the matter. So, is that really geared towards the larger commercial customers?
I think it works in both segments, and this is where the administrative challenges come in. It's not really the homeowner. It's really creating an incentive for installers, contractors to adopt these practices, and then they will pass on. They're offering a more cost-effective solution because they can go to a customer and say, "Hey, if you work with me and I do all these things, you're going to get this adder." So. But then, so the only challenge I think you really face is you want to make sure that the contractors who are marketing these things are doing what they're saying they're going to do. And Annie, who's not here right now, but who's been leading this work, she comes from a energy program implementation background and has dealt with quite a few contractors who will say, "Oh, absolutely, I'm doing this." And if you don't have sort of the processes in place to ensure that they're doing it, well, you're going to have some percentage who are going to be gaming the system.
Yeah.
And so we want to make sure we have the right processes in place to make sure they're not gaming it, and we're actually delivering the impact that we're investing in.
Okay. All right, just one more question. Barbara's mentioned nonprofits. So smaller nonprofits aren't likely going to own a building. And therefore, they're not going to have a system themselves. Larger nonprofits that own buildings, maybe only very large nonprofits, I don't really know. Is there a way to include them? Is the information there so it can be easily included? Is that kind of identification available?
So I think one important point to make here is that this policy that we're recommending is very clearly an iterative. We view this as an iterative process, and so for nonprofits, once the plan is more fully fleshed, is completed, and therein includes the final recommendations about net energy metering, if that recommendation is, we want a policy for nonprofits, I think we bring back and have the discussion around, all right, what is the policy for nonprofits? I think one of the challenges you have is, there are some nonprofits that you say, hey, these are absolutely good nonprofits. We want to help, churches, community benefit nonprofits. But there may be other nonprofits you're like, well, is this profit really a community-oriented nonprofit, or are they just a nonprofit and they're pursuing, an interest that, is not benefit good or bad? Do we want to be providing an adder to that segment? And that's where I think the nonprofit segment becomes a little bit more challenging, because it is it's all-encompassing.
Once we do it, you can't discriminate.
Right. You can't say, well, you're a good we like your nonprofit and we don't like your nonprofit. And so that's where I think the process of finalizing local development business plan will be helpful. We may, through that process, say, hey, we're going to put some more criteria in there.
So I would just suggest to keep that discussion in the mix as this comes back to us, just to flesh out the options and pros and cons of nonprofits. Okay. Thank you very much.
Director Mandel.
So, thank you, Chair.
You're welcome. What are you doing?
I'm trying to get a microphone that works. So, I appreciate that this is not the final policy. I appreciate that we're going to have an opportunity to come back later in the year and flesh this out a little bit more. But I also do appreciate the need to put something in place that sort of gives our future customers a sense of, the general ballpark of what we're looking at. And I think this is pretty close to what we're likely to end up with. And I do want to I look forward to talking about, the grandfathering conversation and what that might look like, the nonprofits, the workforce adders, and all of those. There's some really good ideas that have been brought up tonight that we just don't have time to finish tonight. But we'll definitely, I hope, get to those later this year. So with that, I'm going to move the staff recommendation with anticipation of that future conversation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Motion by Mandel. I have a motion by Mandel, and I have a second by Call. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Director O'Neill.
Thank you. So I wanted to share the Community Advisory Committee recommendation on this issue. Our recommendation was that the board approve the staff recommendations about monthly billing and a yearly cash out in April, and that it commit to rates at minimum competitive to PG&E, but that the board set the final adder amounts after the local development business plan is finalized. We had a really good discussion about this issue, and I'll say the advisory committee really did support much of what is stated in the staff recommendations, fully supporting the improvements on the PG&E's NEM policy, on monthly billing and yearly cash out, and appreciate the recognition of the adders concept. But we made this recommendation in recognition that the NEM policy is a really critical piece of the local development business plan, and that NEM and its adders will be included in the fiscal analysis of this local development business plan that's supposed to be finalized in April. That's in like 2 months. So we think that it makes sense not to finalize a policy in the short term and commit to adders that don't necessarily optimize community benefits. So recognizing, for example, that this current policy suggests a 1 cent per kilowatt adder for low-income households. We really support that bracket for the adder of low-income households, but suggest that we might better benefit low-income communities with the workforce adder as well. So rather than committing to a higher adder for just low-income households, that we wait and be able to analyze the benefits of the broader categories of adders. I'll say that we also, the nonprofit conversation came up at the Community Advisory Committee as well, and that one of the main purposes of that is that nonprofits, all tax-exempt entities, cannot monetize the tax credits for solar, and so that's a reason that it shouldn't just be municipality or municipal entities, but should also be other nonprofits. So that was one of the reasons that one of the advisory committee members supported this motion and didn't want to finalize this.
Can I just want to ask a question, just because so are you okay moving forward tonight knowing that these discussions will continue to take place down the road? Okay, that's what I wanted to make sure.
No, sorry. So the committee did not want to move forward with this as it stands. We wanted to just support adopting a policy that is at par with PG&E and has the improvements of the monthly billing and the yearly cash out, because we didn't want to commit to adders that we will probably change in a few months.
Okay. Well, it sounds like maybe at this point the board is going to deal with that down the road a little bit. Was that a unanimous vote?
That was, yeah,
you.
so of the 5 of us there, 4 in favor, 1 abstained.
Okay, thank you. Director Aragon?
So in reading the staff report, it sounds like we're setting this baseline policy really for marketing purposes and in our outreach to phase 1 customers who may have NEM accounts that will be phased in during phase 3?
It's actually less for existing systems. It's much more for folks that are seeking to install rooftop solar over the course of the coming number of months. So we've had, we're actively every day we're out there meeting with customers, and one of the, especially for large accounts that have multiple sites, one of the questions that we've been getting is, what is your net metering policy? And this is actually particularly the case for municipal accounts who are looking at the potential of having an adder. So a school district saying, we want to install solar this summer. If we don't know if there's going to be an adder, well, do we delay the installation because we may not get the adder if the policy isn't in place? One of the challenges that I think we do face, and one of the reasons why we're recommending action now on a broader set of policies as opposed to, say, let's basically match PG&E, make these more minor enhancements, and then come back when the plan is completed, is because there's a certain amount of cycle time that it just takes to implement these things. So one example is our billing system. If we are going to include an adder, we need to actually make sure that the billing system is set up to account for that additional penny of credit that the customer is going to be given. And so I think when we're thinking about wanting to offer something that is clear to customers on June 1st, waiting until April or May to adopt an updated policy will very likely mean that there will be a period post-launch where we will not be able to offer the enhanced net metering program, because it's just going to take some number of months to implement the policies from a back office perspective.
But we may, in the course of the conversation on the local development business plan, consider adjusting the adder amounts. So right now we're proposing it be, what is it, point 0.1. It could be that we want to maybe modify that to incentivize other types of adders. So while this is a baseline policy, the amounts, we may decide to change the amounts down the road after a thorough review of the local development business plan.
Absolutely. I would say that what we would, the adder that's probably most significant at this point, because is the municipal adder. Yeah. Because the residential accounts don't come in until phase 2. And really, that's the adder that we're sort of setting in place today. And we're recognizing that these other adders are coming. I think the key point here that's maybe not as well articulated as it should be is we don't want to lower the adders. We're not going to say, oh, we're going to offer a penny adder, municipals, but in 4 months say, well, no, we actually want to lower it to half a penny. I think the view here is these are critical systems. We want to see more adoption in the municipal space and in the low-income space, so let's invest more there.
So how do you see like a workforce adder coming into play if we set that at like 0.005?
I think that that's certainly something that when we've assessed and sort of evaluated the financial implications, something we're very comfortable with. Again, the reason we're not including supply shift and workforce here is because we don't want to sort of say customers, oh, there's this adder, but we don't know actually how we're going to implement it yet. We want to have some more details around implementation.
So are we going to tell people that there may be additional adders that we may be implementing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I mean, it sounds like this is going to be something that will be an ongoing discussion.
Yeah, I just want to be sure that we're clear to customers that there are additional adders, community benefit adders that we're going to be offering.
Sure, I understand.
I think our key point is we're making it better.
What I was just trying to say too is that this isn't something where the door is shut.
Yeah.
But this is.
We kind of are. I mean, what I'm hearing you say is, once we set this, we're setting it. I mean, we can't. It's going to be hard to kind of go back, right?
In the areas where we're setting adders,
Yes.
it will be hard to go
For
back in
municipal.
those areas. But I think part of the argument here is we're very confident that municipal and low income are two segments that we really want to focus on because there are knock-on benefits there, and these are underserved segments where we really want to promote more adoption.
Okay, anybody else? All right, is there any objection to the motion before you? Motion passes unanimously, thank you. Board members, staff comments? First of all, again want to thank the alternates for showing up tonight. It's very important, and we certainly needed you to be here, so I appreciate that. The other thing is, how are you doing in establishing the date for the executive committee?
We are, I think, we were polling today, so I think we have a finalized date. If not, the next day or so, we should finalize the date for the executive committee meeting. Is that right, Stephanie? Yeah.
All right. Anybody else? Mendel?
No, I was just saying it's the fourth Friday at noon. I think the date was finalized.
Yeah, I indicated.
Oh, did you send something out?
Still polling, so I just collected
Okay, well,
responses
if
today.
Jesse indicated the fourth Friday is not going to work, then it's not going to work. Oh, it does work for you.
Yes, it does work. I did want to note that March has 5 Fridays, so we're probably going to plan the March meeting for the 5th Friday, just because there's some scheduling conflicts
Why?
on the 23rd. March 23rd would be the 4th Friday.
So, I'm sorry, I'm not following you. So you're saying you'll go to the 5th Friday?
Just for March,
Why wouldn't you just stay at the 4th Friday?
because there's scheduling conflicts.
For who?
The chair.
I probably.
For the chair?
For the chair.
Oh. Well, then you got a problem. No, I don't know. Well, fine. That's why you have vice chairs, but okay.
What time on the 30th?
I think we were looking more around noon or 11?
Noon.
Noon?
Yes.
Noon, so that means Nick will have to buy sandwiches or something. Okay, anybody else? Well, then we're adjourned. Thank you.